The profession of psychology, the discipline of electroencephalography, clinical psychology, speech and hearing all owe their origin to Lee Edward Travis. But his greatest claim to greatness, I believe, was in becoming the founding dean of our Graduate School of Psychology.
Lee Travis was a very important scholar in American psychology. Some people say during the early part of the 20th century or the middle part of the 20th century is one of the most important scholars in psychology in the United States.
One of the brilliant psychologists, psychophysiologists, speech pathologists, experimentalists.
Fuller Seminary was forming a school of psychology and appointed as their founding dean a man by the name of Dr. Lee Edward Travis. And I tell you, I nearly fainted. I said to myself, it can't be. It can't be the same person. It can't be that famous person who had invented the electroencephalogram and had done all that primary research. It couldn't be the same person.
He had a very distinguished career. I came to think of him as one of the grand old men of psychology.
And the whole phenomenon of the EEG and how it is capable of giving us a look into the brain was quite remarkable. I was so taken with it, I went home and I went to the library and I started doing research, looking at this EEG. And a name kept coming up, Lee Edward Travis. Research here, research there.
He was particularly important in the area of speech and hearing disorders. He had the first training program at the University of Iowa for speech pathologists.
He had got very involved in the phenomenon of stuttering. He had a theory about that. He had set up an oscilloscope. He had converted the EEG to EMG, muscle, electromyograph that measures muscle, and got a group of stutterers to come. And while they were stuttering, he would feed back to them the muscle activity of the muscles in the throat that controlled speech. Lo and behold, he was able to teach them, by feeding that information back, how to manage and how to reduce the tension in those muscles. That was literally the beginning of what is now known as biofeedback.
Besides all this, Lee Travis was just a wonderful person. Every time I had a chance to have a conversation with Lee, I was talking, as I knew, with this famous psychologist, and I'd always go away from those conversations feeling like Lee thought I was the important person and I was the eminent scholar.
He had experienced a conversion experience a couple of years before Fuller founded the school. At Bel Air Presbyterian Church one Sunday, he had no background, Christian background, but God met with him and he was transformed. His love for God, his love for the gospel, his passion that this last stage of his life should be a significant one where he would try to integrate psychology with theology.
He was a very warm and engaging person.
He was a cowboy, he was a poet, he was a scientist, he was a lover, he was a mentor.
When we began to think about systems and procedures and interfaces with granting organizations at Fuller in developing our research enterprise, it was natural to think about naming that after such an eminent scholar as Lee Edward Travis.
Becoming a scientist was becoming not someone who follows what others have already done, but really more a scientist is someone who takes a new idea and tries to develop it where there was no such idea before.
The primary thing that we needed to be were healthy people who could give ourselves in a healthy way to the people that were seeing us.
I think without his leadership and his stature, the school might not have survived and certainly would not have flourished.
This phenomenal scientist who in the latter part of his life found his real purpose in serving God and forming the graduate school. And my prayer is that we can continue to have staff and faculty members who are of that caliber.
Lee was a one-of-a-kind man, and we loved him, and he really got this school off to a wonderful start.
He is the model for what we do as a person, and he's the model for what we do as a scholar. So the work of the Travis Research Institute in scaffolding around research at Fuller has been an outgrowth of the life and work of Lee Travis.